I'm saying bye to all the lies and all the times you cried, saying that I wasn't right, yet I was right by your side. You manipulator, playing games, your friends commentators, and I don't know what you say about our private conversations, but it's got them hating. Thanks to all the rumors you be claiming, it's cool, I'm done with you, so they can throw you a celebration. You gon' hate it when you see me with somebody living better. I'm trying to tell you that me just doing me gon' have you jealous.
Hello, folks. Welcome back to Chris Wyatt Reports. It's the Indaba conversation with Chris with our frequent guest, none other than Major General Retired Bantu Holomisa, who is now, once again, a cabinet member, Deputy Minister for Defense and Veterans Affairs. And I believe this is going to be our first conversation with a minister since the Government of National Unity came into existence. Is my microphone going out there? I'm just looking to see if people can hear me. I don't see it showing up here. Let me just check real quick and see if people... Okay, it is going out.
I can hear you.
Okay, you can hear me. They can hear me too. I just checked, but somewhere it wasn't showing up on my screen. All right, so General Holomisa, congratulations on being back in the cabinet again. I think we've talked to you once since then, but today we're going to talk about rising tensions between the United States and South Africa. I'm sure there'll probably be questions about the SANDF and maybe about the Congo. If we can talk about those, we'll get to them a little later on. But you and I want to talk about this tiff, this spat between the government of South Africa and the United States. And we haven't talked ahead of time, so I have no idea what directions this is going to go. My viewers know where I stand on it, but I think they're curious about your position as a member of the cabinet and what's going on. So once again, sir, welcome back to the program. It's a pleasure to have you.
Thank you very much, Chris. Thanks to our viewers, and it's good to see you, man. Where's your long beard? Or after elections, you are celebrating the win of your parties. You felt that you will cut it, eh?
Well, to be fair, General, I trimmed my beard after your elections. I was there last year. We didn't get a chance to meet for my last trip because it just didn't work out. But I was in the Western Cape on Election Day. It was an epic journey to get there. I barely got there the night before because my passport had to be renewed, and then the flight was last minute. So I got there on the 28th. On the 29th, I went to 14 polling stations, including five in Khayelitsha.
Wow.
Yeah. I went around with the Action SA Premier candidate. I went around with the Action SA Premier candidate. I went around with the Action SA Premier candidate. I went around with the Action SA Premier candidate. I went around with the Action. Sorry,
I can hear you.
Yeah, no, I was getting a reverb. Some button turned on. My apologies for that. So I went around with Angela Sobi, the Action SA candidate for Premier in the Western Cape. We went through Khayelitsha. She's from Monenberg originally, so we went there as well. I went to Somerset West, Sea Point, Table View, Rondebosch, all over. So I got a flavor of all kinds of communities there. Anyway, so I
think we must exchange. There are some South Africans who have been offered the refugee status in your country. You must come here, and then we will also give you a license to live. You seem to know South Africa more than anyone else.
So you heard it here first, folks. Minister Bantu Holomisa is offering me refugee status in South Africa. Only if I can. Let's see, where do I want to live? I have to decide on that. But no, so I went around to all those places and I trimmed my beard. And then, yes, we did win our election. But you remember, my beard used to be down to my navel during lockdown. It's working its way up here. So I think, General, there's a problem that creeps in here, General. I turned 59 again this year for the second time, and I'll stay 59 until I hit 70. I have a little trouble with that 60 time. I
thought I was about to welcome you to our club of 60s.
Yeah, well, I'm denying that reality. I'm living in a delusional world. So, as you get a little bit older, vanity starts to creep in. So the beard's making me look my age, and so it's disappearing little by little. Anyway, but seriously, let's talk about this situation. You did send me some images. I haven't had a chance to download them because I've been so busy. I will look at them a little bit later on, and if they're appropriate for sharing, if you give me permission, I'll share them in a video. But you have some concerns about this relationship, do you not?
Yes, I'm not the only one. The entire people of South Africa are concerned about this sudden breakdown of communications between the two countries. I am also surprised how it came out. Normally, issues of this nature, people sit down around the table, but it just came abruptly. But be that as it may, South Africans are looking at the ways of solving the problems between US and South Africa. One of the reasons why South Africans are concerned is that America has been supportive to South Africa, especially the anti-apartheid activists. They campaigned until we got our freedom in 1994. And President Mandela, when he became a president, he communicated with the Bush Senior and also asked him directly to assist South Africa in sending monitors to come and monitor violence as per the OAU, Organization of African Unity's resolution that there be people to go and monitor violence in South Africa, the so-called black-on-black violence. I remember vividly when President Mandela, I was in his office and he asked me to accompany him to US. On that day, before we left, he said to Barbara Masegela, his PA, private assistant, personal assistant, he said, "Can you please put me through to President Bush?" And it was at 8:30 in the morning in South Africa. Then Barbara Masegela opened the door and said, "Madiba, don't you know that Bush is asleep?" "Okay, darling. When he's up, I want to speak to him." Indeed, around 5:30, the call came through. And Mandela explained to him that he should assist by instructing the USA representative at the UN Security Council to pass this resolution. Indeed, we succeeded on that. A lot of students were sent to South Africa, to USA on different schools and so on. And I was part and parcel of the Binational Commission of Mbeki and Al Gore, a vice president of USA. Relationships were good. I didn't expect that this kind of relationship will just abruptly end like this. I thought at least the new government of USA would petition or send its ambassador to South Africa, or the representative of ambassador to engage our government. But to read this thing on social media, we are not used to this.
Well, I can understand where you're coming from there, General. But from our perspective, from a U.S. perspective, of course, I'm on the outside looking in from the U.S. And so from our perspective, it's not a sudden thing. This is something that's been building for a long time. And it's been frustrating the Americans diplomatically that the government, which was ANC until the GNU was formed, that the ANC has not been listening or not paying attention to our overtures. So one of the issues that's tied to this, of course, is the Lady R. Whether there was something on the Lady R or not isn't the issue. But for 5 months, General, for 5 months, Ambassador Brigitte and their diplomatic mission asked the South African government about what the Lady R was doing at Simonstown Naval Base because the U.S. and Europeans had sanctioned it. Now, South Africa hadn't sanctioned it, so South Africa's a sovereign state. They're welcome to let that ship come in there, but it was a polite request, and they didn't get any response for 5 months, and then Brigitte finally went to the public and did it. But there's a number of issues that have been building for a long time, and the South African government, from our perspective, has not been paying attention to these concerns the U.S. has had. Now, whether they're valid or not, we can argue about that. I think most of the concerns the U.S. government has are valid, but they're all tied to the ANC, not to the GNU as such. And so, again, from our perspective, it's not a sudden thing, but I definitely appreciate from your perspective why it appears to be out of the blue. It just happened. And it comes at an unfortunate time. But if you look at the sequence of events and knowing the character who is President Trump, who when you swing at him, he swings back. If we go back, well, he does. He's a New York businessman. He's a real estate developer, and if you swing, he comes back at you. Remember how he attacked his opponents in 2016, calling Marco Rubio, who's now his foreign secretary, Little Marco, and lying Ted Cruz and all that stuff. But Trump, when he became president, suspended aid across the globe for 90 days. Well, instead of going, oh man, they've suspended, some South African politicians came out and started complaining that South Africa was being singled out before he ever did a tweet. He didn't do his first tweet until the 3rd of February. But the 20th of January is when it was suspended. And then people started complaining, well, he's attacking South Africa. No, This was global. South Africa wasn't singled out. When they started commenting about him, then he put a tweet out, and then he put an executive order out. And then he was attacked, and then President Ramaphosa goes into his budget or his State of the Nation address, and what's his first sentence? We will not be bullied. This is not a good look. And then the ANC is welcome to meet with whomever they want, but they meet with the Iranian ambassador, and they put it on Twitter and boast about it, and it's just one thing after another. It's a tit for tat that's not going good for either side. And I really worry about South Africa's future because contrary to what President Ramaphosa said, he said the U.S. needs South Africa. Well, I think South Africa is important to the U.S., but honestly, we don't need it. And I love South Africa. I'm not being insulting, but South Africa much more needs America than we need South Africa. I think we both prosper from the relationship, but if anybody's going to hurt, it's going to be South Africans if this thing continues to go south.
I think with what you have just narrated, having been involved in negotiations for the freedom of South Africa, I think we should rescue this situation as soon as possible. The best way to do so is to sit around the table. And I hope that when the ambassador of USA arrives in South Africa, one of his or her prime mission should be to engage the South African government with a view to organize a roundtable discussion between USA and South Africa. Let the government of USA table their concerns in a roundtable discussion, because President Trump has inherited the stories which you are now narrating, like we have inherited them in the GNU, that of the Russian ship wending to dock at that. That was during the time of Biden. So let us discuss those issues and agree to move forward.
Well, General, 100%, I agree with you. That was what needs to happen. I don't know who the ambassador is going to be. I did see an announcement earlier that President Trump had nominated his ambassador to Canada today, and 39 other appointments. I don't know if those are ambassadors and if South Africa is included. I do know that I have not received a phone call offering me the position. So I did put my hat in the ring, although a lot of people saying Joel Pollak is the front runner, but I'm hearing some people saying that's not the case. But whomever they choose to be the ambassador, I hope it's a much more effectual ambassador than President Trump's first term when Lana Marks was there. I don't think she did anything for U.S. relations with South Africa. Yes. Ambassador Brigade, of course, I was his senior military advisor at the U.S. mission to the African Union, so I know him very well. And I think that you're right. We've inherited the government of national unity and President Trump have inherited a lot of stuff. And I think that's important. I think that the government of South Africa is not reading the room. Now, I'm not talking about you or specific ministers, but I'm saying the government is not reading the room because on the 6th of February last year, a bipartisan group in the House of Representatives put a resolution forward to reassess the relationship with South Africa because of a list of grievances that we had, including Naledi Pandor calling Hamas and congratulating them after that's maybe not what she did, but that's how it's portrayed, talking to Hamas after their attack, and then the whole situation with the ICJ and a whole list of things. Legislators were moving to disassociate or punish South Africa long before Trump became president. Remember, in February last year, Trump was fighting legal case about whether he's going to go to jail or not, whether he's going to be on the ballot or not. So this predates Trump, and maybe that opens up a window that maybe whomever the ambassador is going to be and the South African government, if people are serious, we can get some adults in the room like yourself and talk about this and get this sorted out. But I will tell you this, President Trump is obviously very transactional. And I suspect that he's going to expect some concessions. I'm not threatening or demanding. I'm just saying, knowing the nature of the guy, and it's fine for South Africa to ask for some concessions in response. So I think that maybe that's where we go forward.
Well, that's the nature of engagement and nature of negotiations anyway. However, we must record that the people who were in the assemble in South Africa then, as well as those who were members of the Congress in your country. This is a new team which is in power now. And if President Cyril Ramaphosa, as he has promised to us during our meeting with him as leaders, he said he's going to assemble a team to be ready to engage USA. Anytime we will be ready to assist. Some of us, as early as 1987, I've been, 88, 89, up to 94. I've been coming to USA, conniving with the anti-apartheid activists. You have people like John Lewis, who was a congressperson. You have Pelosi. You have many of them. I used to go to the Capitol to campaign for a change in South Africa. But when I see that that change did come in 1994, and over a night, it can spoil the relationship of USA and SA, I don't subscribe to that. It has to be solved.
Well, General, from another perspective here is the interesting is that during the first Trump administration, Tucker Carlson hosted Ernst Roots, then with AfriForum. And after that, because Trump used to watch Tucker Carlson, he put a tweet out, which was not the most helpful tweet, about farm murders, about plasmord, and it was attacked by politicians in South Africa, including President Ramaphosa. I don't know what Donald Trump knows about South Africa. He's never been here. He can keep his America. Well, not very helpful. That was inflammatory. But Trump really didn't address South Africa at all before or after that. It was a one-off. So this time around, I'm going to suggest that what's happened is, and the rhetoric that's coming up from Julius Malema and even a deputy minister from IFP, which surprised me, really basically in my view, attacking America in Parliament, which was unnecessary and gratuitous. This has only opened the aperture for politicians in this administration to look closer. And I think that the concerns go beyond simply the offenses against America to now the U.S. is concerned about what's happening in South Africa, which wasn't the case before, I would argue. After apartheid, South Africa's sovereign state, it's their business, let them run their country the way they like, we'll support them. But now we have people in our government who are concerned about the Bella bill. Why would Americans even know about Bella? They're concerned about the 3% tax that Parks Tau is proposing on businesses to fund black businesses exclusively. And then they're also concerned about expropriation on that compensation. But I think it's a mistake for South Africans to think that that was the motivation for the Trump administration to do something. In the executive order that President Trump published on the 7th of February, he's very clear about 4 issues. One of them is what he says is the treatment of ethnic minorities. Okay, that's one issue. And that's what the government glommed onto. But then he talks about the issue with the ICG case and also the South African government working against U.S. friends and allies, including, he mentioned it by name, but like Taiwan, and forcing them to move their office to Joburg instead of being in Hatfield and downgrading it. So against our allies and our interests, the ICG case, and then specifically, the one that should frighten people, and it frustrates me, General Holomisa, that people aren't paying attention. The last thing in this executive order about the reason he issued it is the reinvigoration of relations with Iran for commercial, military, and nuclear. Now, South Africa is a sovereign state, but if anybody on the planet thinks the United States is going to allow Iran to become a nuclear power, whether that's happening or not, the perception is there. And I think this is now a situation where the United States has never intruded, for the most part, into South Africa's domestic affairs. But I think that the U.S. has an interest there now, and it's something that's going to have to be discussed, even if it really is none of our business, if that makes sense.
Yes, I hope that that could be put into the agenda. You must remember also that we must not sound as if we're alarmists. You remember the time of Bush the Jr., who said there were weapons of mass destruction in somewhere, I think in Iraq, but it turned out that there was no such a thing. So that's why I'm saying it would be good if the meeting of the leaders or Secretary of Defense, Foreign Affairs Minister or International Relations Minister of South Africa, security related departments, to be in that meeting and find out what is the problem exactly. But as far as the South Africa going to the international court, let this one be clear. I think I have a right in our own way of challenging some of the things which we feel that they are not justifiable. So we went to a neutral arbiter, and that arbiter came up with what we have today. Remember that in South Africa, we live with people from Israel, people from Pakistan, Palestine, all over the world. And I don't know, this use of violence by either side, it has to come to a stop at some stage. And I hope that people can follow what Mandela did by inviting Israel and as well as Palestinians to South Africa for a meeting. And I would suggest that USA should be present in such roundtable discussion. Out of those 4 countries or group of people, I'm sure we can come up with a solution.
General Holomisa, I don't disagree with you. South Africa is a sovereign state. They can go to the International Court of Justice for issues between states. That's certainly their prerogative. I mean, we've seen the ICJ decide cases between Namibia and Botswana over Sududu Island, between Cameroon and between the Nigerians over the Bokassa Peninsula in Nigeria. We've also seen the International Court of Justice argue and rule against China in the South China Sea, and they've just ignored it, unfortunately. So it's the right. But again, perspectives and viewpoints matter. So let me give a viewpoint here so that you may know this, and if you don't, just so it's better informed. A lot of policymakers in Washington are frustrated with the ANC, not the GNU, but the ANC, okay, in that it went to the ICJ over Israel, and it made the case that they're standing up for human rights. Okay, let's accept that. But where was the ANC when Gambia took Myanmar to the court a few years ago in 2019 over the genocide of the Rohingya? The ANC wasn't anywhere to be found. Where is the ANC over the genocide against the Uyghurs in China? They're not rocking a boat with China. Where was the ANC over the genocide in Rwanda in 1994? Now, I'm not criticizing the ANC. I'm just saying, and that was tough. They just came in power then. But what I am saying is that certainly the more recent things, they didn't take part in these things. And then they come forward and saying, we care about human rights. Well, do you really? What did you say about the death and the extermination of Tigrayans in Ethiopia? I mean, you see where I'm going with this. So the point is, a lot of policymakers going, well, this isn't anything to do with human rights. It's because of the longstanding personal relationship that ANC senior leaders have with the PLO and now with Hamas. That's what's driving it. I'm not making the claim. I'm just trying to lay it out that this is an underlying issue here. There's a question of hypocrisy. And honestly, if I were to be honest, I would say that I think there's a question of hypocrisy here. If South Africa's government is so concerned about human rights, where are they about what's going on in the Congo, yada, yada, yada. So, I mean, I share that because you're a reasonable person, you're a cogent person, you're an honorable person, and we can have a conversation even if we disagree. I don't know if we disagree on that, but I just want to share that with you.
No, I respect your analysis of the situation, but you have already answered yourself on that by saying that the relationship between ANC and PLO dates back from many, many years. And I happen to know that when Mr. Mandela in New York introduced me to Arafat, who was the leader of the PLO, and when his house was bombed and offices, Mandela, who was already retired, he sent me there to find out what happened. And then I went and I met Arafat and his cabinet, and then I went back to report to Madiba. And Arafat was merely saying, please tell the world that we cannot live like this. That was the message I conveyed. So, but talking is not going to evade our way of thinking. Let us engage each other.
Absolutely. I don't know if you know this, General, but when I was stationed in Tunisia at the embassy there, I lived in El Menzasis, which is one of the northern districts of Tunis. My neighbor was the PLO representative. Small world. He lived right next to me. So we shared a wall, but very small world. So as far as this whole situation, yeah, I think people need to get in a room and talk. But so I'm going to share with you my personal view. I'm very concerned First off,
Yes.
Solidarity and AfriForum have long-standing contacts, like the anti-apartheid movement, with legislators for policy. They came over here, and I think that's their prerogative. And this treason nonsense talk, I think someone's just playing politics, but they did that. The Democratic Alliance sent a delegation over. They have long-standing contacts with Democrats and Republicans to try to, both of these groups try to convince the U.S. government not to sanction South Africa and not to apply tariffs. That was their goal. Although I think the AfriForum and Solidarity mission has been misstated by the public or by the media. But that's happened. But this all started at the beginning of February. It's now the middle of March. President
Yes.
Ramaphosa is talking about sending a delegation. When? This is urgent. It needs to happen now. And by the way, it doesn't need to be Naledi Pandor. I'll just share that, okay?
No, she retired, so you don't worry about that. But the South African government is working on that. Remember also that you have priorities. Right now, we are talking about tariffs. You are talking about Ukraine problem and Russia. I think we need to give the White House a space to breathe. The problems which we have between the two countries can be solved later on, but we must map out a way forward. I'm worried that you have not yet appointed an ambassador to engage that ambassador, and those so that he can fast track the proposed meetings.
Well, General, as I said, my phone hasn't rang yet. My hat is in the ring. I don't think I'll get the call to be the ambassador, but I would truly enjoy that. I'm sure we'd have more than one coffee together if
welcome.
Yeah, so waiting to hear that, but it's going to be a challenge here. So the whole situation with these recent acts in South Africa that's really getting a lot of attention now. And, the thing is that Americans never paid attention. Expropriation without compensation was introduced in 2018 in Parliament, and it was tabled, and it was there. It's been hanging around. The president had it on his desk for like 9 months before he signed it, something like that. But now that it's signed, it's getting a lot of attention, and people are paying attention to it. Now, the problem we have is that we have members of the government going around misrepresenting things. I heard Foreign Minister from Durko, Ronnie Lamola, on Deutsche Welle, gave an interview with South African journalists, which appeared in Deutsche Welle, and he said that every country has this. Every country has expropriation without compensation. That's factually untrue. Our Constitution explicitly prohibits expropriation without compensation. You must compensate when you take property, unless someone's a criminal. Then they're convicted through due process. That's a different story. But you can't just take people's property. That's a misrepresentation of things, and that's not helpful. Him going around saying that sort of thing.
No. The act which we read doesn't say that you immediately expropriate a land without compensation. This land we need is for development and is needed by the state. It's not a land which will be given to individuals. That process is being looked into by Department of Land Affairs. It has been debated for years, for years. That we want our land back, this and that. But on this particular one, it addresses the question of development. And we say if the Town X has identified, for instance, a need for housing, and this is the land which can be expropriated, we are not just going to take that land. We will approach the individual who's owned that land and say, we have an interest in this land. We want to build a highway here. We want to build a dam and so on and so on. Can you assist us? How much are you going to need? But it's only when the individual has flatly refused, but still, before we expropriate that land, that individual is free to go to court, up to constitutional court. So far, we have not expropriated not a piece of land, as far as I know.
No, they haven't. But the practical impact of this is people are calling President Trump a liar, some politicians in South Africa, because he put confiscating in there. But if people squat on land, the state may not be confiscating land, but people have illegally confiscated. In the past, the government under the ANC has repeatedly removed squatters from land, especially in Gauteng with the Red Ants. They go out with the Joburg Metro Police and remove people. So historically, they've done that, but not just on state land, but also on private land many times. But now we have in Seshego, in Polokwane, where land has been taken and the government has not removed them from that, and the media has gone silent in reporting on it. East London, we have people occupying land and parsing it out illegally. So that's a practical aspect. And the people in Seshego say that, well, the president passed the law, we are expropriating, and we expect the Polokwane to give us services. And that's actually happening.
My friend, here in South Africa, there's law which says if people have occupied that land illegally, if before you can remove them as policemen, you must have a court order.
Correct.
That's a process. So I'm sure the areas you have mentioned, the government is looking into that. But the court roll of this country is long. There are so many cases.
Yeah, you're right about that. The justice is moving very slowly.
Even ourselves in the defense, we've been calling for NPA to say, when are you prosecuting the soldiers who were involved in maladministration and so on, and so on? The cases dates back as what, 2021? Yeah, some of them.
Absolutely. Well, I have a personal issue with this. I'll explain why. I have no dog in the fight. You know, I don't own any property. I have no business in South Africa. But for me, I served in uniform, as you did, and I did it in support of our Constitution, which is in line with, for the most part, it predates the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, but most of what's in there is in our Constitution already. And in respect for private property rights is sacrosanct in there. My issue with this is that the government keeps throwing red herrings out there. Not you, but the government. They're saying, well, there's been no, Ronnie Lamola says there's been no confiscation. Well, of course not. The ink is still wet on the bill. But there's a real trust issue here. I don't trust the African National Congress to not abuse this. I'm being honest. I don't trust them. We've seen this in so many other areas.
Don't worry. They are no longer in the majority in this country. And also we have a constitution here.
Well, they're acting like they're in the majority. I mean, the DA doesn't seem much of a bulwark against them in the government of national unity. Maybe over the budget, we'll see. But here's the situation. So expropriation without compensation. Section 25 of the Constitution says it must be in the public purpose and the public interest, and it has to be just compensation. But beyond that, not stated in the Constitution, something you said a few moments ago, if a landowner or property owner refuses, then the state can come and expropriate that. I have a problem with that. We, the polity, you and I, form governments to represent us. And unless it's in the dire interest of the public, the government should never confiscate. So in America, we used eminent domain, which is similar to expropriation. We used eminent domain to build the railroads across the country so that it was in the public benefit. And so people had to give up farmland for the byways, you know, on each side for that. And the railroads owned it. So that's an example. But we've had abuse of eminent domain here. We've compensated people for taking their land, but it's been abused by politicians to build shopping malls and casinos, which is not its purpose. We've already seen President Ramaphosa state that they're going to use the new act to expropriate without compensation abandoned buildings in Johannesburg. Now, those of us who know Johannesburg Central Business, you know that many people who own property there, it isn't safe for them to go there, whether they're black, white, or brown and own the property. They've been chased off their property. When they tried to evict squatters, they were denied doing that by the law because there's a process for it. And then after a period of time, there's no action because, as you said, the dockets are so long, no action takes place. And now the government's saying that buildings are abandoned, they're not paying taxes, so they're going to confiscate it. I mean, that's kind of self-fulfilling what the government said wasn't going to happen. And I don't think it's about land. But anyway, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Well, land and property they are interrelated. They are related, rather. So I'm not going to get into details on that. But what we need to do in South Africa, especially in cities like Johannesburg, is to identify the owners of the properties. Because most of these properties in the CBD have been hijacked. And I think that the government has to do a stock taking and make sure that they trace the owners of these properties. Some of these people left after 1994 to countries like Australia, Canada, Europe, and in protest against a new government. That National Party of de Klerk has sold them. But we have to register each and every building and say, once we trace that person, we can engage him or her and say, we would like to offer to buy this property at cost because it has not been maintained. It cannot be paid the normal
value.
Money. Yes, according to today's value. So therefore, we will pay this property at cost. But if there's nobody who is raising his or her hand, what must we do? Must we fold our arms and let those buildings be in the hands of criminals? No. We are accountable to the government and the constitution as well. We must act when there is a need to act.
100%. I appreciate that. But what I'm saying is that the government has said that they're not going to do it, and then the president just within a month later says they're going to do exactly that. I've been telling people for years that Section 25 explicitly says that it's not about land, that land isn't the only form of property. You know, you've got intangibles, you got Krugerrands, you've got Bucky's, you've got houses, you've got flats, you've got businesses, you've got intellectual property. This is all property. And if the government can expropriate it, I fear for whatever government will be the government of the day. I would never give that power to Washington, D.C., or expect London or Paris or Tokyo to have it. And I certainly wouldn't want Pretoria government to have it. So that's kind of where I sit on it, General. I know that this is a hot button issue in South Africa, and it's becoming more hot button because in the process of this Expropriation and Compensation Act, they engaged the public. And there were, I think, over 750, 800,000 responses, and well over 90% of it, people opposed it. And the president waited until the next government was in place, and then he signed it. So I think a lot of people were just a little concerned about it. I guess we'll see how it rolls out.
We are fortunate in that there are people who are already petitioning the Concord. They are taking the matter up to the highest court. So let's hope that there will be clarity. But I sense that President Ramaphosa, before he signed that bill, after he kept it for a long time in his office, he might have engaged the constitutional experts to say, what's your take on this? That, I guess that is why then there was this element which was added, that you will still talk about compensating that individual. But that individual, you cannot take that property if he or she wants to challenge you to the highest court. So, unfortunately, but as you know, I'm one of the people who, or as a subject of staying in the reserves. People, Black South Africans, were forcefully removed in their own places. There were no courts at that stage. I think the South African government is trying to find a solution where they say, this land, we want it for development. It's not like the other legislation which people were proposing that we take the land randomly without compensation. So give us a chance, my friend.
Well, I see where you're coming from, but you've touched on something I think is very important, General, and that is the need for a survey. So the last land survey you're talking about for the buildings in Johannesburg, yes. I get that. We need to know who actually owns them and what the status of them is. But for land, I mean, a lot of people keep going, especially media, going back to 2017 land audit and misstating things. I heard Ronnie Lamola say that white South Africans own 80% of the land. That's total nonsense. Even in 2017, the government's own data didn't reflect it. 114 million hectares of land in South Africa. 93 million of that were privately owned in 2017. Of the 93 million hectares are privately owned, yes, when it comes to agricultural holdings, white South Africans were disproportionately in possession of that land, and black South Africans were wildly underrepresented. But 93 million hectares, of which 36 million are considered agricultural, and 26 million were owned by white South Africans. That's a true statement. But that is not 80% of the land. That's 72% of what was designated as agricultural, and that's also data that's 7 years old. We've seen lots of of land change hands. 3.9 million hectares of land have been purchased by the government, agricultural land, and much of it not redistributed. So there is an urgent need, in my view, for a 2025 land audit survey by the government of South Africa. And I'm not sure why that's not happening. I know that's not your portfolio, but it's something that definitely needs to happen.
Well, I think South Africa will have to do benchmarking as to how is land handled, the land issues that are handled in other countries. For instance, in USA, everyone has got a land, he's got a title deed, but in this country, you will find that the majority citizens of South Africa are landless, they own nothing. So it's a process of transformation which is going to take decades to address, but there has to be a start.
Well, I agree. There definitely has to be a start, and I'm never again. You know, I'm going to come back to the ANC on this. I'm never convinced that they've put a good faith effort through here. It reminds me of Mugabe. Mugabe in Zimbabwe was perfectly fine with the land situation until he lost a referendum, and when he lost the referendum, then suddenly land became an issue because it was losing popularity. I think the ANC, in my view, rather cynically, has ignored this issue when they should have done it a much more serious effort.
Yes,
until they lost popular support. And my view is they think this is a way to win popular support back. I don't agree that that's going to do it for them, but I do agree that it's something that needs to be addressed. Those who would like to buy land should be allowed to buy land. Those who don't have the means to buy it because of whatever circumstances put them in, if the government's able to help with that, I don't have an issue with that. But I do think that the narrative is wildly skewed, and it's unfortunate because South Africans, we both know the South Africans, by and large, black, white, brown, they just want to raise their family. They want to live in peace. They want to worship the way they like to worship. They want to associate with who they want to associate with. But we have actors in politics and in the media who are pushing racial narratives and dividing South Africans. And these are black, white, and brown people. And they need to stop because this is a dangerous situation for all South Africans. And it's not a good look.
I fully agree with you. We must not play race card, but let us develop policies where black and white, colored Indians, you name them, they have a piece of land and then say, yes, at least there is security in my family. Currently, it's not.
It's not currently, and I agree with you, but I have a solution right now. I call on the government of South Africa, as I've done before, to issue title deed to the RDP houses immediately to give people capital. Those who are occupying an RDP house would have instant capital, which they can go to a bank and they have collateral. If they want to start a tuck shop or they want to start a business, a hair salon, they have collateral. They can borrow money from a bank. So can we shift the focus a little bit here? It looks like people are trying to get your attention. A hot button issue here. Well, you're a busy person. You're a minister there. So I think somebody just shut the curtain so the sun went away.
Yes.
That's a little bit better. So you're in the defense ministry. That's your portfolio with the minister. And there's been a lot of discussion about M23 and Goma and the fatalities and what's going on there. I saw today that SADC is canceling the mission and they're going to phase withdraw everyone from there. That's a rather, no comment on South Africa's military, but for SADC, that's a rather ignominious return from the Congo, where they just went in December of 2023. They haven't stabilized anything, so it's disappointing if that's what they were hoping for. SADC has had successful missions in the past to Comoros. They've gone in Mozambique. That's debatable whether that's successful, but they've also gone to Lesotho with Operation Boleas twice. That went well. So this is a little disappointing. What's the situation with the SANDF? Have we already established a timeline for when the troops will be back? Is it something you disclose publicly, or is it still something close hold?
A big no. I had a privilege this morning to sit in that meeting as an observer through virtual systems, together with my Minister of Defense. We were listening to the president or leaders of SADC. President Cyril Ramaphosa represented South Africa. And this is a continuation of the discussions they had started in Ethiopia and in other cities with a view to find a solution to the Congo situation currently, but through peaceful means. That is, they must go back to the table and continue negotiating. But we are doing this. We will not withdraw in DRC hastily, because it has to be planned properly. And we must also make sure that the United Nations Security Council resolution is implemented, because you can't just leave those people there and not knowing what is going to be the next step. UN Security Council has made it clear that the Rwandan forces as well as M23 must go out of DRC and Goma and so on. So someone from New York must tell us what is the timetable. And then the UN Security Council and SADC must now work together and say, right, here are our weapons. Here are our resources. We are going to pull them out by that month. And then who is going to take over? Maybe the UN Security Council has a plan to say we will put troops on the ground to make sure that the civilians are protected and that issues related to humanity are addressed as well. So it's not going to be an abrupt exercise. The SADC leaders have made it clear this morning.
Well, I would expect it would not be an abrupt exercise withdrawal, but they are withdrawing. And look,
Yes,
I don't mean to be a pessimist, but I mean, we've been dealing with the Congo for 35 years now, this mess. It's been going on for a long time, and no one seems to have a solution here. It's very frustrating. We've had endless deployments of UN peacekeepers, and there's a lot of fatigue. That's one reason why SADC went in there, because UN couldn't find troops to do the mission, to continue it. And they've renamed the mission from MONUC to this, to that. It's really unfortunate, and it's obviously has a lot to do with the wealth, the vast wealth that's in the eastern part of the Congo that people can glom their hands onto. We saw Zimbabwe and Namibia go into the conflict to prop up a previous government back in the 1990s, and they went in there for the minerals. They said it was for peace, but it wasn't for peace. We know better. They were actually in there for the minerals. The generals in the ZDF became fabulously wealthy as a consequence of that, and the world looked the other way. I didn't, but the world looked the other way. So it's kind of a mess, and I hope that we can figure something out there. So it's good to hear that you were able to sit in on that meeting. So the budget was proposed and roundly attacked by COSATU and the South African Communist Party and the DA and Action SA and the Freedom Front Plus. Everybody, pretty much everybody. So it's mostly wrapped around the value-added tax, which will have the biggest impact on the poorest South Africans because they'll have to pay it. So people are standing up for that, although now we hear some, but anyway, not really important. But so that budget came out, and I saw, if I read it correctly, they're proposing $9 billion more for the Defense Department. Is that correct? Will you be getting more funding if this budget's approved?
I'm also crying like them because the cake was too small for us. That 9 billion was between the SANDF and Correctional Services departments.
So it's split.
Yes. So it's a drop in the ocean, but we have to understand that the debt of South Africa is too high.
Yep.
So we must tighten our belt and to make sure that at least by 2027, we will have at least reduced this debt. It's huge. But I'm happy at least that the cake, which was distributed by the Minister of Finance, was, he applied, I would say, a balancing act in terms of looking after those who are on the disadvantaged areas who are not employed. The grants were a little bit increased. And also there will be zero-rated food items. So it's not bad, but we must be reasonable and say the timing, the economic performance of South Africa, the growth have been pointing south for almost the last 15 years. So we need to have an ascendancy plan as to how do we take off, and then other areas which needs funding. But at least health, education, let me say social security of South Africa is still at least protected in this budget. And also there's a lot of money which has been put into infrastructure, which obviously will create a lot of jobs, and also deal with our infrastructure, which is has not been maintained because of lack of funds.
Well, you actually find yourself in a difficult spot because defense is not a priority when all these other pressing needs are out there. In fact, last time I looked, the defense spending in South Africa was 0.7% of GDP. So with that in mind, you've now been in the position for, 9 months or thereabouts, roughly.
Yes.
You've had chance to travel around. I'm going to guess you've been to maybe Palabora, maybe you've been to Langebaan, you've been to Waterkloof, you've been to Bloemfontein, to different, I'm just guessing, place you've been.
Yes.
So you've been out, you've seen troops, you've taken a look around. What's the most pressing issue from a troop perspective, from a troopy perspective, whether it's the Navy, the Air Force, Army, just in general? Is it pay? Is it morale? Is it living conditions? What's the biggest concern that the ministry really needs to address for soldiers?
Well, in the case of South Africa, as you know, as you correctly put it, it was 0.57% of the GDP. But fortunately, President Ramaphosa had issued a directive to say the South African National Defence Force has been defunded for almost 25 years. So we have to relook at it. And as a result, he said we should be working towards a 1.7% of the GDP to spend in the defense force. So last year, in the last 6 months or so, we have been busy drafting a new strategy in terms of the 2015 defense review. We have reviewed it again because it was never implemented. But the troops of South Africa have listened when they were told that the priority is elsewhere. But now the president, I think he came at the right time to say, let's work towards helping the Department of Defense. But as you know, the budget of defense is not stagnated. If there's a crisis tomorrow, National Treasury will have to find something to help us.
Right, for an operation, they have to come up with it, like the money the money to go to the Congo had to come out of somewhere. We have a similar situation. You know, it's difficult from the current operating funds to take on a mission, but we get that in the U.S. military all the time. You're going to Kosovo, you're going to Iraq, you're going to Somalia, you're going here. It all comes out of the current operating budget, and it puts us behind the curve unless they can give supplementals. But for South Africa, the supplementals are a much bigger challenge than, say, for the U.S. To help defense. So, all right. So, from a troop perspective, we didn't really touch on that, but going forward, so they'll be back out of the Congo at some point, a phased withdrawal with a timeline that's yet to be developed, and we'll have them back there. Is the mission in Mozambique still ongoing? Are there still South African troops up there in the Cabo Delgado province? We have not heard much about that in the press.
No, the South African troops were withdrawn, and we have been returning back our equipment.
Okay, so
yes, but as you know, deployment is not, you saw it in Afghanistan. Your parliament took decision to withdraw, but it took years to withdraw. So it's a process.
Indeed it is.
But fortunately for ours, are already back. The troops are already back.
That's good to hear. That means they're out of danger there at least. Only training accidents will be their concern now. Hopefully that's not something that happens. We all know that military life is a very dangerous business. People die in training, unfortunately, so it's never fully safe. So what's your sense, General Holomisa, about the government and national unity? I mean, if it's a secret, you don't have to share it, but I'm just curious. I don't sit in those meetings. I know that, like, when the expropriation without compensation thing rolled out, John Steenhuisen complained that he found found out through WhatsApp. He didn't find out from the president. So I mean that doesn't bode well. But are the discussions collegial? Are they good conversations, or are these like boardrooms where people are arguing over who's going to take the company in which direction? What's it like?
Well, so far, I've not experienced any problems at the level where I operate, I mean at cabinet level. And President Ramaphosa has engaged leaders of those who are in the GNU, like myself, DA included. I've never experienced any animosity in the process. But when you read newspapers and social media, then you will find that Zille has her own agenda and pressurizing those who are in government. But I'm not worried about that. It's the nature of coalition governments. So this is no more a one-party state. We should be thankful that within a short space of time after elections, we managed to form a government. And that government is being tested at times, but not every day. It's only on the issue of this act legislation which President has passed, signed. But those issues, we are not a parliament. GNU is not a parliament. So anyone who has got a complaint about legislation, they know the process. But if they want to play politics, they must play politics. Then we are also able to play politics by saying to them, take your matter back to the Constitutional Court if you are not happy with Act number so-and-so of 2024, because it was done by the previous government, parliament, and those decisions were taken whilst the DA was in parliament. So they cannot say they were not part of it. Not necessarily that if you oppose, you voted against that act will not be binding if the majority have said this is the law. So I'm not worried about. GNU is doing very well, and the people on the ground, they can see that when they ask for something, there's a prompt response in a number of areas. I'm sure you have not been witnessing any protests in the streets and so on for service protests, because Cyril Ramaphosa has told us that we must be hands-on.
Well, I haven't been seeing any protests, but I attribute to the fact that the EFF is out of money. They don't have money to.
No, they were not the only ones who
I know.
protesting.
I know. I just having to go at the EFF. But so I do have a question for you in your role. So you're a deputy minister, and you were deputy minister under President Mandela in the early days, back in the day.
As Deputy Minister of Environment, and now Deputy Minister of Defense. So I've been sent back to the barracks.
Yeah, exactly. But I want to ask you, because you're still a party leader, you're the head of the United Democratic Movement, UDM. How does that play out? Because your party came to the government of national unity and joined this grand coalition. Does the president sit around with the leaders of the parties? Because John Steenhuisen is also a minister of agriculture and a leader of party. Yes. So do you have like a dual role in that? I mean, as a GNU, maybe the leaders of the parties sit down and talk, and then you also have your role as a deputy cabinet minister. I mean, it seems a little unusual. Does it play out? Do you have two roles there, or is it the same?
We have a forum where of political party leaders who are in the GNU. Then the president chairs that session, and the deputy president also attends it, and the chief whip of the ANC. Also, we meet in cabinet committees. Those who sit in the cabinet will meet in the cabinet meetings at their own time. But otherwise, the process starts from the time a department has got a suggestion, then it tables to the cabinet committees, whether it's security or social security related memorandums. Then they are discussed there by all of us, and then later on, they would be ratified, underlined ratified by the cabinet. That means the full ministers, those who are full ministers, not deputies, will assess what we have discussed earlier on. So I'm happy with the way things are happening. Well, there's a lot of a good rapport between the players.
Well, I do appreciate this perspective, and that's why I'm glad that you wanted to talk again. We were talking about the rising tensions between the U.S. and South Africa, but I think that this is helpful insight because this is not what you see in the press. This conversation that doesn't play out this way because it doesn't sell newspapers.
Unfortunately, some of the members who are part of the GNU at times, they tend to bet on a wicket of politics unnecessary.
Agreed. And so it is interesting to get your perspective. So, General Holomisa, you've been generous with your time once again. I really appreciate that. It's not like you're for work. It's not like you're not a busy person. So I do appreciate this conversation.
And I'm about to go to SABC TV to talk about the withdrawal of our troops. So if you can ask your remaining few questions.
No, I think that's it. I'm going to wrap it up here because I know your time is valuable. I'm going to let you go. So I'm going to give you the floor, as I always give my guests, a chance to wrap it up with any thoughts you've got, maybe something positive. I mean, one thing I'll take from this is that we need to have adults in a room to have a conversation between the United States and South Africa, and we need to do it soon. But I'll give you a chance. The floor is yours, sir. As always, anything you'd like to share with the audience.
Thank you very much, Chris, for inviting me in your platform as usual, and to our listeners or viewers. The bottom line between South Africa and USA, both they have to swallow their pride and sit around the table and face each other. And then we find a solution to move forward, because this relationship currently, it can mess up many, many things, from security to economic related programs. Thank you.
You're very welcome, General. Thank you for coming on. And I think the biggest losers in this, unfortunately, will be South Africans in this tiff between the U.S. and South Africa. Most Americans won't even notice this or feel it. If anything, they'll have to pay an extra 2.5% for a bottle of wine or BMW parts. But that's not going to, yeah.
Chris, remember, there are many Americans who have invested in South Africa. They've got businesses. And America, I think, is the second largest trade partner.
Correct.
If I'm not mistaken, after mainland China. So let us not make a mistake. There are many Americans who are coming here in South Africa on a daily basis. If you go to Cape Town, I mean, you have been there, you saw United Airlines are there. Everyone is flying in and out. So let us not, politics must not affect the innocent people who are doing business. That's my message.
Well, I agree with that, but my concern is the businessmen. I do concern about them, but I'm really concerned about the people who are left hanging on short notice from PEPFAR and things like that. That's unfortunate for them. That's, hopefully we can get that sorted out. Major General Bantu Holomisa, Deputy Minister for Defense and Veterans Affairs, Kealoboa. It's always a pleasure. Thank you for being here. I appreciate your time. Good luck with SABC. Be careful. That's a government-run media outlet. They might try to get you.
I know, no chance.
All right. I'll let you sign off. You're very welcome.
Thanks, man. Thank you.
All right, folks. That's Major General Bantu Holomisa. There we go. He's out of there. Okay. So thank you for that. All right. So thank you for tuning in. All right. I'm going to come back to the stream right now and make an adjustment here. I see that about 300 people left, and that's their prerogative. But let me just get to, hang on a second. There it is. Edit this, and let me come back here. Customization, live chat. Okay, so the chat is turned back on for those who are still here and want to chat. I turned the chat off, not necessarily because of what people were saying, but because it was becoming too big a distraction in the conversation. There was too much going on over there. So the chat is reopened. If you want to join the chat, if you have a question or comment, I'll be happy to address it before we wrap up here. And it was becoming very distracting over there. And some people are, what's this? Oh, blocked. Hang on, to take care of something here. That video playing Breibrucki's got me blocked. My video is blocked. So I have to trim out that segment, which I knew was going to happen. All right. So, all right. That's underway now. All right. Cool beans. Okay. So there you go. All right, Injustice Pass. Well done, says James Moriarty. Talks of going to court to take. Yes, it costs a lot of money to go to court. Hey, folks, Erica's got her eyes out there. So thanks for hanging around to the people who did hang around and those who tuned in. I hope you found it interesting. We had a lot of people coming in, but a lot of people just want to come in and insult the general. That's not necessary. It's gratuitous. Do you really think that I'm going to be able to get members of parliament or people to come in and answer questions? I did ask some hard questions of the general. If people abuse them, there's no need for that. If you're angry about something, then write to your member of government, write to that ministry. Don't come here and attack people. That's unnecessary. While it's generally appreciated, we love. Why do you care so much? Just general curiosity. Gorky the hobo. Well, because that's just who I am. That's who I've always been. That's how I've always behaved. I've always cared. I've always focused. I've always taken care of my subordinates. I've always developed my subordinates. I've always had an interest in whatever's going on. And if you're asking why South Africa specifically, well, that's a long story, which I've shared many, many times. It's not just South Africa, it's all of Africa. And it's not just all of Africa, it's all humanity. But I am a regional specialist for Africa, having served in Tunisia, Liberia, Botswana, Malawi, Niger, Mauritania, Uganda, and Ethiopia, and having worked in over 34, 38 African countries. But also spent a third of my adult life in Europe, 3 tours in Germany, 1 in Italy. I'm a published author on topics about Africa in popular press and in academic circles, university lecturer, undergraduate, postgraduate, having taught in both. So Africa, Europe, geopolitics, history, culture, language, all part of my existence. I grew up in all kinds of circumstances, but in high school lived in abject poverty in rural Appalachia, and would go to the library and look at atlases and gazetteers and look at maps and read about countries around the world. And I go, I want to go there and I want to go there. But when I was young, it was Andorra and Liechtenstein and the Vatican City and all these little postage stamp countries in Europe. And then, from there it grew into the late 70s as a young man, interest in Africa. And then it became a serious interest in Africa in the early 1980s. And then I decided in 1984 that that's what I wanted to do with my life, and that's where I'm at. Do you have working for you on dairy? I don't have a dairy farm anymore. No, I'm not a dairy farmer now. I was a dairy farmer. No, I don't have any South Africans working for me. I have nobody working for me. Well, technically that's not true. I'm the commander of a veterans organization, and we have people that work for us there, work in our kitchen and our bar. Reg says, you're a true gentleman and proven neutral analyst. Yeah, I try to be. Anyway, so for those whose feelings were hurt because I turned off the chat, I don't know what to tell you. But if people are honest, they'll admit that people were misbehaving in the chat. Like people are happy with the GNU. Thank you. Yeah, I know people aren't happy, and that's fine. But don't come in and abuse my guests. That's unnecessary. We don't have confidence in the development they promise. Yeah, I got you. Val. Okay. Tertiary motive. Sorry, we need you to fix potholes, not any dams. You're cool. Oh, you keep your cool well, Colonel. Thank you, Joe. Well, I mean, you get shot at and mortar rounds explode around you. Artillery knocks you all on your ass. You kind of develop a bit of skill to deal with things in a crisis. So thank you. Thank you, Chris. You always have to listen to another person's point, even if you don't agree. And also, and read between lines. Yeah, I mean, people are welcome to do that. And yes, and General Holomisa has been a career politician since he left military service, and he rose very high in the ranks in the Transkei. But that doesn't make him any less of a gentleman. So he actually asked to come on. He suggested come on the program. He said he thanked me for the invite, but he suggested come on. There are no politicians. Okay, let me ask you this, ladies and gentlemen. Let me ask you this question very quickly for the 890 people who still hang around. How many other people in the media or in YouTube are engaging members of the South African government and the cabinet specifically to talk about this relationship in an honest fashion with America? Name one. I'm happy to listen. Name one. And if you don't like what he had to say, that's fine. But at least we had a conversation about it. And there's merit to what he said. And there's certainly merit to what I said as well about we need people to behave like adults and have a conversation. But you can see there's a clear difference here about viewpoints. And that's why I made it clear that I was expressing a viewpoint that's prevalent among American policymakers. One word, Southern government. Okay. Disabling live stream. What was that about? Well, I've just answered, Alan. I just answered. Do you think it's appropriate for people to come in and say foul things about my guest, and I'm supposed to tolerate that? It was very distracting, and it's very selfish and attention-seeking. If you didn't like it, I don't know what to tell you. It's my prerogative. I'm not going to treat my guest poorly, and I did ask him hard questions. Who is Anthea? Anthea Jeffrey, Michelle? You talking about Anthea Jeffrey? I've interviewed Anthea Jeffrey. What else? 50% of farmland is trust under kings and these people have no rights to land. They have the best and most fertile land, says Albert. Okay. Yeah, Tomahawk says it's probably just smart to keep the chat off if you interview politicians. Yeah, given the current climate in South Africa, it might just be smart. I've had General Holomisa on here many times, a much smaller audience of 100, 150 people, and people have been respectful for the most part. Yeah, Janice, close the chat. Disabling the live stream, not cool. Oh, it is cool. Being an asshole in the chat is not cool, Alan. I'm not saying you were. I don't know what you said or didn't say. It's very cool. It's very cool. It's appropriate. So if you don't like it, I'm sorry. I don't know what to tell you. We don't mistreat people here. It's very rare to get to ask someone of a higher up in the government, and there's no point in flinging insults. Exactly. Thank you, PK. I don't understand why people don't get that. Why people think it's appropriate to come in here and do this. Because you have a keyboard? That's just rude. What about Mpofu Wash? You're welcome, Jean. People forget that there is a time and place for exactly, Heinrich Havanga. There's a time and place for everything. Yes, and so B Funk KC, thank you for that comment. Maybe, think about this for just a second. Think about this. Maybe it's just possible, knowing the relationship that General Holomisa and I have as former military colleagues, knowing that he can have a conversation with me and try to get the points across that the government wants to get across while I'm having a conversation. Maybe this interview is a consequence of someone in Ramaphosa's cabinet saying, or Holomisa saying, maybe we should talk to someone in America. Some of the people are listening to. And maybe that's what this was. There might have been something behind this altogether. I don't know. I didn't ask. So, yeah. It's raining. Hey, in KZN. Okay. Do you think the Expropriation Act will be directed to the Ngoma Trust? No, I don't think it will. I don't think it'll go to either one. Loretta says, breaks her heart to see how politics is going backwards. Johan Voigt says, you're right, Chris. This is an awesome entertainment. I was swapping between Ronaldo's stream and yours. I had no idea Ronaldo was on. Thanks for the questions you asked him, but once again, my opinion, I don't think he could. Well, yeah, Aaron's right. It's fine, and that's respectful. But there were things going on that weren't respectful. Arno says, if you have respect for the colonel, you respect the guests in his house. My grandpa used to be a tobacco farmer until 96. ANC took his farm from a 20 cent below market price. So I do not trust the. Well, I don't trust the ANC either. Did I not make that clear? I think I did. On several occasions, I said, I don't trust the ANC. No government should have this power. And, I made that pretty clear. Chris, that was amazing. Your comment with absolute facts. That's why guests will respect you and get on your show. Yeah, exactly. Look, I had Emma Powell on the other day, and a lot of people were angry at the DA. And some people didn't like the interview. That's fine. That's your prerogative. But we found out things about her trip to America. We got insights that weren't available elsewhere. I've had 3 guests on that people have had issues with recently. I had Neil Diamond from the South African Chamber of Commerce. I had Emma Powell from the DA, and I've had Bantu Holomisa. Who else is doing this? Is Mpofu Walsh bringing on solidarity? No. Is they bringing on Ernst Roots? No. Are they bringing on Black Monday? No. I bring them on, and I also bring these other people on. Folks, again, I'm a neutral arbiter. I do have bias and I do have concern, and I do promote Afrikaans and Sotho and Tswana in particular and colored South Africans. That's true. But I do like to try to be as objective as possible and get as many people on here as we can. You don't go anywhere unless you work together. Now, that said, I don't trust the ANC for a microsecond. Craig says, dude, they're talking about ethnic cleansing us through forced removal like it's normal. That's what you took from General Holomisa's comment? I took that he didn't have much sympathy for the buildings being confiscated in Joburg, but I didn't see anything about forced removals. Where are you getting that from? My guest didn't say that. Are you reading subtext at what he said? Please explain. And yeah, Tian, your grandfather was robbed at below market price. And the same thing happened to that game ranch there in Mpumalanga. They did the same thing to it. A coal company tried to get it, and they didn't get it, so they wound up getting it, and they sold it, but they were forced to sell their property. That was my point to General Holomisa, is that no government has the right to take your land. I mean, this in the public interest is being expanded to anything that they want it to be, and that's abuse. It's one thing to build a railroad, to increase interstate commerce, to grow the country, to expand to the west with eminent domain. That's one thing. It's quite another in Connecticut to remove people from homes they've been in for 150 or 200 years, their family, in Bridgeport, Connecticut, to rip down neighborhoods on the beach so you can have the oceanfront to create a casino. That's not legitimate use of eminent domain. That's a corrupt perversion of eminent domain, just like expropriation without compensation is a corrupt perversion of expropriation. Yep. Dirk, you're right about courses not being successful. Do you think Expropriation Act will be directed? Yeah, I don't think it will. All right, where am I at now? I'm trying to catch up. Okay, was hoping you would ask him about the shenanigans in the trans guy. Okay, well, line in the sand, that's an interesting topic, but that wasn't for this conversation. We talked about that in one of my first interviews with him a couple years back. Sounds reasonable, but it's time to evaluate our political leaders' roles. I don't disagree, Pip Hunter. Is a well-known name in South Africa going back many years, so to have him on the show was really something, to be honest. I agree, Virtual Western Cape, it is. He's known, been around a long time. Thank you, Chris. I sincerely appreciate you taking the time and voice of reason in our current climate. You're welcome. Switch off the live chat next time. Christy Duploy says, I was in the DA for 2 years. I can tell you exactly what's going on. A lot of people tell me that, and I do talk to a lot of people, Christy, but I'm happy to talk to you. Numos says, just remember this is damage control. Okay, got caught. Okay. Lisa Marie Bota says it was insightful, but I think people are so uncertain about the future. We need something to help us understand. Fair enough. I think what upset us if they have a conversation with the owner and the owner doesn't agree, the courts need to be involved. Well, exactly. And what have I said in my analysis of that? It's the whole thing is rigged. So you can pass a law to expropriate property without compensation, okay? And then if the owner is approached and they don't want to sell, then their options are to go to court or to have an arbiter do it. Who appoints the judges? The government. Who wrote the law? The government. Who appoints the arbitrator? The government. Who do the arbitrator and the judges owe their fealty to? The people who appointed them. Who are they going to rule in favor of? Most of the time, the government. That is a deck stacked against the property owner. That's why the guys sold their game ranch there in Mpumalanga, because they knew they were going to lose it anyway. I haven't interviewed anybody in the ANC. He's not in the ANC. He was briefly a long time ago. I wonder the ones that throw insults are showing exactly what they're accusing us of. That's racism. Yeah, he was talking about forced removals during the apartheid era, not removing people now. See, people hear what they want here. Thank you, Peter, for squaring that away. Yeah, he was talking about the forced removals during the apartheid era. He wasn't talking about forced removing people now. And I also brought up, turn over the landies, right, for the RDP housing. So yeah. Rudy says these people are clever, know how to manipulate, but yes, use information instead of words. But I'm sure you know that there are snakes out there. Alan says maybe we have different definitions of insult. Well, I think that maybe we do, but calling my guest a liar, saying other things. I mean, that's not necessary. What did he lie about? What did he lie about? And why would you do that? This isn't chimpanzees in a cage throwing feces at each other. Mr. Moeller, sometimes one can get narrow-minded. Yeah, you're very welcome. Sue Walsh, how's it going? You'd be commended for being able to get all these high-profile guests. Yeah, I mean, look, I've had Franz Cronier on here. I've had Rob Hersoff on here. Bantu Holomisa. We've had the guy who's from the Freedom Front Plus, who's the nephew of, what's his name there? From your perspective, do you think the roundtable discussions will... no, I don't think that's really going to solve it. Ngama gave 140 Rand Super Chat. Thank you for that. I missed it during the chat. No, I don't think it will. I think the only thing that's going to change the needle now, because, see, the ANC stepped in it. They stepped in it. If they just hadn't been so arrogant and whining whining when Trump announced the suspension of foreign aid, and woe is me. It wasn't woe is you. It's the world, dude. You're not at the center of the universe, South African ANC. If they hadn't reacted in the fashion they had, they might have gotten away with this. But they have a habit of putting their foot in their mouth and intentionally insulting the West. I mean, honestly, if you look at what the ANC says, objectively, most of the time, they basically say that the West is a bunch of racists who hate black people and oppress people, and we're all neo-colonialists. I mean, that's the gist of their argument about the West. How can you be a partner with someone that does that? It doesn't make any sense. Hey, Val, you're back. It's better for you to close the chat when you go live with high-ups. Probably. Yep. I don't have contact with Gabe McKenzie. I've reached out to him on a few occasions, got nowhere. You are a lighthouse in dark Africa. Thank you, Miranda. Yep. The deck is stacked in the government's favor. Yep, government. It's basic equity laws applied to land ownership. Why will the ANC give the masses RDP houses, yet not give them title deeds? Because they want them dependent. Yeah, there it keeps in their. Oh, you answered the question. Owners can't afford to win in court. Exactly. Can't fight in court. They don't have the money. That's why we need a NGO that provides legal services that someone with a lot of money funds. So it just has an unlimited budget to protect people's rights. ZA bro wanted to buy a farm now, but now they want to sell the farm, but there's already someone that's moved in. I have to now remove them on my own. Good Lord, that's crazy. It's a problem. The general public think that they will own the land that they're being promised. Exactly, no. It'll be held by the government. If the EFF and the MK have their way, no one will own land. Yeah, well, Bantu Holomisa was talking about land. There's 21% of South Africa is owned by the government, so there's definitely land they can use there. I like that you have controversial people on. You can't have people you agree with. That's what being unbiased is. That's why I watch you and not a roommate. Yeah, exactly, Lindy. I mean, I'm in the process of trying to get Ike Kumalo on here. I don't know if I'll agree or disagree with Ike, but it's somebody a little bit different. So yeah, I try to. Look. There's a reason General Holomisa came on the channel. And it was kind of out of the blue. And I suspect, I don't know, I didn't ask him. I suspect it's because the government of South Africa is looking for ways to calm the room down. I don't know if that calmed the room down, but we'll see. And look, I have no ambition or no delusions of grandeur that my station life is any higher than it really is. I'm not acting like I'm Tucker Carlson. I actually have influence, or I'm Joe Rogan has influence over public opinion. But there is no doubt, folks, we know there is no doubt whatsoever that the media in South Africa are watching my content. The trolls are watching my content. Politicians are watching my content, and it's having an impact. Positive or negative, it's having an impact. So that may be why he was on here. So anyway, but he's been on my program before. Anytime I've asked him, he's always come on. I just hadn't asked him recently. So yeah, they gave away the houses for free. Yep. All right. The RDP housing. Okay, so hang on. Sarita Flippa says, great interview. Thank you. Sorry, folks. I can't get rid of this thing in my throat. Working 7:30 to 22:30. Okay. People need to understand that because you do not agree with the opinion of a guest does not make the guest a liar. Exactly. Just because you disagree. So, I saw a guest on Newspod because people referred to me. It was Ivan Meyer from the DA. And I went there and I wrote up my response from his conversation on the 10th of March. And my initial comment was, he's a liar. Now, I edited that before I posted it and I took that out because that was unfair. But Ivan Meyer said some patently untrue things. He told the guest on Newspod that if you come to America as a refugee, you'll be living in tents. That's a lie. Factually untrue. I didn't call him a liar, though, because that's not productive. And then he also started reading one of the international definitions of refugee and said that it just doesn't work, but people in South Africa aren't refugees. It doesn't matter what the international definition is. It matters what the U.S. government's law is. This isn't refugee status for Ukraine or for going to Germany or for going to Thailand. It's refugee status to enter America. and only American law is applicable. We are not part of some grand European Union bullshit or African Union bullshit. We are a sovereign state, and we have our own laws, and we adhere to them. And we have a law, the Immigration and Nationality Act of 1980, and it governs this. And the description is nothing like at all what Ivan Meyer said on Newspod. And I'm going to deal with that and make a comment on that. Your husband knew Holomisa. He was a top student officer in the South African Defense Force, not ANC Defense, old South Africa. Yep. Yeah, very sharp guy. Okay. Enjoy today's guest. Thanks. You made us laugh with your blossomy cheeks. Generally very angry, 30 years experience. Look, I got it, Virtual Western Cape, but that's no reason for people to be rude to my guest. Anyway. Well, maybe you should be grateful to have a defense force that can't be used against the population. They also watch the chats. That's right. And so, you're not doing yourself any favor by being rude. Theodora says, don't put yourself down, Colonel. You have a voice. Well, look, I'm a humble person at heart. Whatever I have, I earned, and I worked really hard for. And, we all make mistakes. I'm sure I've said a few things or done a few things that are dumb in my lifetime. I don't recall them, but I'm sure. Yeah, the Kamalo interview would be entertaining. Yeah, well, if I can get him on. So I was in touch with him last night. I respect him making the effort, but don't like the ANC. But he's not ANC, PK. He's not an ANC member. He's his own party, UDM. He broke away from the ANC in the 1990s because they treated him like crap. Numos says, yes, Chris, but they have no intention of changing their policy, so how can two walk together unless they agreed? Well, the first step is to sit down. Russia now may not come to the table, and that's going to benefit Ukraine because Trump made his ultimatum on both sides. The Ukrainians have backed down. Will the Russians back down? If they don't, they're not going to get what they want. Simple as that. Julie's calling Elam racist. These people in Parliament are jokes, so aggravating, says Wesley. I see where you're coming from. I know who Petrus is. I haven't had him on. Clearly values and respects you and your channel regardless of your differing opinion. Yeah, exactly. Exactly, Jaya. That's what adults do. And so, yeah. Mutual respect. That's why I don't mistreat him. But that's probably the most back and forth and counterpoint we've ever had in a conversation because things are kind of warm right now in the political situation. But normally it's just a congenial conversation. That wasn't a combative conversation, but you see that he pushed back and I pushed back. So, all right. And you can decide where the truth is. It's not up to us to decide. Peter, the question was not asking about how I South African destroyed. Well, I asked that question before Jackie Johnston in a previous interview with him. It wasn't the topic today. The topic was rising tensions between the U.S. and South Africa, and we went a little bit further than that, talking about the budget. So why didn't you ask him if he is? Because that's just a rude question, Hussein. How is he supposed to answer that? Seriously, SW Hussein, how is he supposed to answer that? So, General, should you have been the defense minister? I actually did ask it in a cheeky fashion so that he didn't have to answer it before. And he laughed and answered the question. You expect him to say, no, of course I'm. It's like, okay, that'd be like me saying, okay, Chris, these three people were nominated to be the ambassador of South Africa. What are your thoughts? And my thoughts are, none of them are good. I should be the ambassador. I'm the smartest guy in the room. Come on, you can't put the guy in a spot like that. I didn't hear him say he didn't know about expropriation. I must have missed that. He was not part of the ANC that killed it. He wasn't. Colonel, please invite Julius Malema as a guest. Would like to hear his side towards. Yeah, he's not going to be on. I agree with. I gave him. Okay. Yeah, you agree that they got him to test the waters. I think so. Yeah, well, he's speaking from a government of South Africa perspective, but he did acknowledge that the ANC are the ones that have those later on. You got to pay attention, Holden. He did say the ANC because I said, and he said you answered your own point there, Chris. He said the ANC have long-standing relationships with the PLO and others. You're hearing what you want to hear. I wouldn't get a word in edgewise with Julius Malema. He would never shut up. Yeah, Loretta, that's probably something to take away from this. It sounds like the government of South Africa is waiting for an ambassador to show up, and that might be months down the road. So that's not a good development. That isn't what was said, but one could infer that from it. One could definitely infer that from it. Yep, that's a good point. Yep. That is a good point, Loretta. DA wants me to apply for the ward counselor candidate program. I turned them down. Okay, Christy. I don't know where you served at, Christy. I don't think we shared that. I think he was sending message USA. Maybe, Sloth Puppy, maybe. Alan says, you're making a huge difference here. You have a grasp on our politics better than anyone else in the country. Well, thank you, Alan, and thank you for being understanding. We disagree about me turning the chat off, but I think you understand my perspective. I don't like turning the chat off. I don't like turning comments off. The only thing I ever take off is things that are blatantly racist, but I couldn't do that. It was too much coming in. I didn't think there's anything racist, but it was definitely disrespectful and it was unnecessary. The gentleman hasn't done anything to warrant that. So it was very distracting. So thank you for sticking around. I appreciate that. And you do your research and you know your facts. Basically, you work harder than the average South African. Just joking. Well, I work a hell of a lot harder than the average South African. Yeah, the UDM was formed in 1997. That's correct. He was briefly in the ANC. He joined the ANC coming out of the Transkei briefly, and then they had a parting of ways. Did not know that you thought he was... I didn't think he was part of the ANC. Someone here mentioned several times he was in the ANC. I never thought that. Sloth Puppy says, professional interview. Thank you. And Numa says, great for your involvement. Okay, I'm trying to catch up on the chat here really quickly. Most of my visitors this week, when I ask about the refugee program and their feeling about it, everybody wants to go, but unsure and scared. 80% watch your channel. That's amazing. That means the numbers are much higher than this. There's no way that all of my viewers come from Jan's shop or they come from this place, that place. They're all over the place. So, okay, I'm going to share something with you, okay? I'm going to share something with you. So after the last stream, I was rushed for time. I contacted Ziane, the young lady, the Breibrücke lady. I called her. And her father was there and his mate. And she was smiling because I caught her off guard and embarrassed her. So came over, and it turns out that her father and the mate, his friend, both watch my content. They didn't know she was doing an interview with me. So they were talking. The reason you kept hearing in the background, I hear him because they're like, hey, that sounds like Chris. That sounds like the Colonel. So her father watches my content, and so does his friend. And she didn't know that. She never told them she was coming on the channel. That's too funny. Anyway, Monterey Brits, good evening, Colonel. I agree with you. You need to be open-minded even when we don't agree with someone. Yep, thank you. You're very welcome. How can I give you feedback tomorrow? I don't know what you're talking about there. You should make contact with Lauren Avant. She was also involved in the DA and went through. She realized what was going on behind the scenes. Okay, Jarethra, I don't know her. Real Diplomat, I think we already went through so much. Yep. What do you think is the key advisor having Trump's ear in his South Africa? What is your chance to interview him? I don't know who it is. I think Ted Cruz might be one of the people behind it, but I don't know. I don't have a feel for what's going on in that White House. Juju's an outdated ideologue. Yep. They can't expect the U.S. to come here when they're the ones that screwed up. Exactly. The heavens have opened in Durban. Oh, it's raining. Okay. No worries, says Alan. Cool beans. It's not a biggie. Yeah, agreed. Dylan, thank you for understanding my point of view. Heavy rain, Amazon Toady. Okay. My dad liked Holomisa's books. Okay. I think President Trump's been very patient. They have. And I was going to say that, but I got distracted. I was going to say, listen, General, President Trump has not removed you from AGOA, and it's illegal. You're not even legal to be in it. I didn't get to that. Dale and Fundameva, thank you. Really enjoyed your evening. Okay, cool. You're welcome, Ronell. Fundalinda, thanks for the interview, Chris. Sorry, chat was hectic. It's okay. Don't treat your guests with disrespect until they open that door. The only way you solve issues is by talking. And the only way you get people back in the program is being respectful. Okay. Black helicopters coming for me. You hear him? Very professional, respectful discussion. Colonel always brings a high standard to every video and live stream. At least we can. And we had a very entertaining video before that with the Breibrücke story. Yeah, before I forget, I have family in Amalan too. Oh, really? Okay. You know the story of the horses that they put rescue boat to sea that drowned a long time ago? No, I don't know that story. Your grandmother's from Groningen. Okay, cool. Yeah, no, I have ancestors go back a long time from Amaland. About the Breibrücke girl's father. Yeah, that was pretty cool, huh? Honestly, never paid much attention to the UDM and saw his name on docs from the ANC. Just thought he was, nope. No, PK is not part of it. He was in the ANC briefly when they transitioned from 94 to 97, and he left the ANC rather acrimoniously and founded the UDM, which used to get 500,000 voters. Now they're down to about 60, 70,000. Werner says, apologies for getting heat. Some of us are just tired. It's okay, Werner, but that's why I shut the chat off. So I did it because I know people are getting excited, and some people are upset that I turned the chat off. You as long as you appreciate why I did it. I don't like doing that. I just did it. I have one complaint. Please, can you wear a suit and next time you speak to Deputy Minister? Theodoros, actually, I will wear shorts. And a hoodie, a gray hoodie, a la John Fetterman. Do you think South Africa should be concerned about the ISIS group? No, I've covered that many, many times, Hussein, that they're not ISIS. That's just what they call themselves, okay? KLD Technologies gave a 14 Rand super chat. Thank you for that. Okay. Do you reckon J.D. Vance will be the next president? It's a long time before we get to it, but Trump is certainly grooming him. Notice how Donald Trump promotes all of his subordinates. When he's in the White House signing executive orders, he's like, hey, Dave over here, he knows about that. Come over. He gets his secretary of this to talk and answer that question. Not because he doesn't know, but he's elevating his subordinates, develop them, mentoring them, coaching them. J.D. Vance, the same thing. How many meetings have you seen with the president and the vice president in the same room? When did Kamala Harris ever get asked her opinion in a press conference? Oh, Joe didn't have press conferences like this. So Donald Trump brings his subordinates in. In his first administration, it was less like that. It was more Trump. This time, he's doing what he's always done in his business career, and that's promoting his subordinates, giving them a chance to succeed. So, yeah, he's grooming Vance to be the next president. Whether he gets it or not, it's a whole different story. Her dad is just watching to see which boys need to be invited for a walk in the bush. Same surname, Simon. Okay, Gideon, there you go. Do you know the origin of it? She said it might be Koi. Sadly, I think that many of us, our personal problems stem from us being unwilling to listen to each other. I saw today that they've started to breaking down BLM Square. Yep, I heard about that. Sure, Loretta, what's your question before we wrap up? Where is the welding glasses? I need a tan. Now I'm blind. My eyes are burning the other white meat. What are you guys talking about? Francois said, I totally agree with you. I attend a lot of meetings with farmers, and I usually do not let the police attend. I brief police separately because the police attend, they're going to get shouted and insulted. Yep. Love the quality responses. Okay. Chris very seldom turns off the chat. No, it's rare that I've done that. What footwear? Cullfoot Silky, man. I'm dancing here barefoot. There you go. Yep. Do you have any info on the previous president of the Philippines did? Yeah, no, he is accused of human rights abuses and extrajudicial murder of people in the drug war. Okay, reading up now. He was the minister in the government and assumed he was ANC. He was ANC at that time. At that time, Neville. That's our PK. He was ANC at that time, but he hasn't been ANC since 97. And he was only ANC briefly because he was in the trans guy. He was never in the ANC prior to that. Fiona Fundavalt with a super chat of 50 Rand. Thank you for that, Fiona. Oh, I've got the where's it at? Come on. Alert box is turned off because my guest was here. Trump is the dumbest genius you'll ever meet. Let me check and see if I got a response because I did something for you all here. Let me see. I don't think I've got a response. So when did I send that? Sent at 11:59. So it was just about noon. I'm looking to see if I got a response on something I sent. Okay, 12 o'clock. Okay, okay, cool. Okay, folks. So I have a contact at the State Department who's a retired lieutenant colonel who's been working at the State Department for years. So he's retiring in a couple weeks. I caught him just before he left. So I don't have an answer directly. Let me just see. Hang on a second here. See if they responded. Okay, they didn't respond. Okay, so I'm waiting for the press because I called them and I called the State Department and I told them that I do journalism now. I introduced myself as a colonel, so they wouldn't answer the question on the phone. They directed me to their press office regarding the emails from the embassy. So my friend, I'm going to tell you this right now. My friend is a trustworthy source. He doesn't have the answer, but he works in the Africa Bureau at the State Department in Washington, D.C. So I'm waiting to hear back from the press people there and also from, thank you, Manis Potgieter, for the 50 Rand super chat. So I'm waiting to hear back from the press people and waiting to hear back from the desk officer who covers and from the embassy. They've got my request. I put it in, and I don't want to say it's expedited, but it went to the right people, okay? The initial feedback from my friend, who's a retired Army officer who works at the State Department, has been working in the Africa Bureau for 20 years. His initial response was that he thinks it might be a scam, okay? So before you give any information out, let me get back to that and read what he said. I'm not going to read your whole message or tell you who he is. He responded very quickly, actually. When did it come across? He responded within an hour of me doing it. He says, I strongly suspect it's a scam, but I will allow our embassy colleagues to answer the mail. All right? So my friend is a good guy. I respect him a lot, although he kind of pissed me off once upon a time about something minor, but it hurt my feelings. But anyway, so the whole thing, I'll do a video here shortly, and I'll give you initial feedback on that, okay? Classic Mr. Price Rugby PT book. Could have patented my name, would have made millions of rugby balls. Yeah, you're right, Gil. Gilbert is actually your first name? But any government turning a blind eye to the big-time corruption is complicit. Seems like a cordial person if he was the president's here. Hope he's asking him to phone Trump. Yeah, exactly. So anyway, this is a win-win for the South African government and for those who are concerned about South Africa. I think it's a win-win because maybe we've helpfully opened a door here. We had almost 8,000 people tune in for this, so that's good news. I've never had more than 800 or 1,200, 1,500 people max tune in for a conversation with the general in the past. So there you go. All right. Thanks, guys. All right. I'm going to wrap it up here, and I'm going to see if I can't get a response back. But thank you all for the super chats. Those that came in, the 3 new members, the 714 people currently here. Should I do a night owls? Yeah, I figured it was Gilbert. Should I do a night owls? Okay. Well, the problem with writing a letter is how it will get delivered unless you hand deliver it. I said, take your issue to the person. Don't insult them here. Take it to the government ministry. So, yeah, so that's what I said. But yeah, letters are still respected by people, but how you get it there? There's no postal service. I don't know how you're going to do that. Hand deliver it. Do a poll. Should I do a poll on that? Night owls? Okay. Hang on a second. Should we do a night owls? Yes, please. Yes, please. Yes, please. Okay. All right. I'll tell you what. It is almost 8 o'clock in South Africa. I will set up a night owls for 9 p.m. Okay. All right. 9 p.m. All right. So 9 p.m. Look for it. Okay. Do you keep up with the chat? You have it down to an art. I try to. How do I keep? It's not easy, Bob. Particularly now with 800 people or 1,000 people, it's harder. I'm doing a pretty good job, but I do fall behind at times. The blood moon is tonight. That's correct. What topic or chit chat? Well, the topic will be the email from the embassy that people are getting, if it's really from the embassy. Hopefully I'll get a response back. What time is it in Texas? It's 1 hour behind us. So it's 12:46 there. So I will come on at 9 p.m. or 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for Night Owls, and that will be it'll be 9 o'clock for South Africans. Okay. All right. But I can't stay long. It'll just be an hour or so because I've got to go in and do veteran stuff tonight. Okay. And I've got to reach out to Ike Kamala in the meantime. Don't throw the baby away with the bathwater. Exactly. Why do you think it's taking so long? It's not taking long, Peter. It's not taking long. Evan Gelopta, who is the attorney, the law professor, who's been weighing in on this, the guy that's been learning Afrikaans, made a point in a video he made. I watched this video and he said, look, this will take time. You have to understand they got to get it right. Yeah, I appreciate where you come from. I could have written this program over the weekend, but maybe I'm just being arrogant. All right. Anyway, so we'll do a night owls coming up, okay? We haven't done that in a while. Finally going to fetch passports tomorrow. Congratulations, Pierre Rousseau. I had people that swore adamantly on my program just a day ago that Home Affairs is shut down. The computers are dead. Nobody's getting a passport for months. And I said, maybe the computers are shut down where you're at, but maybe people's passports are already made. They just have to collect them. So everybody has a different experience. All right. All righty, guys. We'll see you here shortly. What's Wyoming like? It's terrible, Bach. It's terrible. Wyoming's horrible. Martini Henry, thanks for all your efforts, Strauss family. Thank you so much for that, Strauss. Martini Henry sounds like a rifle. And Arnie Nell, thank you for your membership. And Rick did his today. Okay. Thank you, Arnie. Para Ruan's giving a super chat. Oh, super chat's coming in. Leaving a silly comment on social media and think it will change your government or your life will take better life. Suck before your comment, after your comment. Yeah, it doesn't really accomplish much. Thank you, Para Ruan, for the 88 Rand. I like the 88. That's a new approach. Wyoming's terrible. That's right, Neville. Tell them it's terrible. PK, I expressed my interest and applied on a website back in January to the Trump administration, but they don't know who I am. So anyway. All right. No, Werner, it's okay. You can bring it up. We love Wyoming. We just don't want people to know that. All right, guys. All right, we're going to take a break here. I'll see you in about an hour if you want to join us, okay? Yes, Sharon Stone, it is any property. I know that. I've said that endlessly. I'm the analyst that's been telling you that all along. It's not about land. It's a red herring. Look at it. They're already going to go after expropriating buildings in Johannesburg. That's not land. And next is your pensions. All right? And who is Warris? I don't know. All right. Cheers, everybody. We're going to do it here. I'll catch you in a little bit on the next one, okay? Bye-bye.